What if the most popular origin story in Irish family history was a complete lie? For over 400 years, millions of families believed dark-haired Irish relatives came from shipwrecked Spanish sailors. But when scientists finally cracked open the DNA, they found something so much older and so much stranger that it rewrites everything we thought we knew about who the Irish really are. If this kind of deep history fascinates you, do me a quick favor right now. Tap that like button, hit subscribe, and share this video with anyone in your family who has ever heard the words Black Irish. Trust me, they need to see this. Let me take you back to a kitchen table. Maybe it was yours, maybe it was your grandparents'. There's a family photo album open in front of you, and in that album there is always one person who stands out. Dark wavy hair, deep brown eyes, skin that catches the sun instead of burning under it. And this person is surrounded by cousins and siblings covered in freckles and topped with bright red hair. Someone at the table, usually an uncle or an aunt, leans over and says the same thing. That has been said in Irish families for centuries. That is the Black Irish in the family. That comes from the Spanish. And then you get the story. The year is 1588. King Philip II of Spain launches the largest naval fleet the world has ever seen. Around 130 ships, close to 30,000 men. Their mission is to sail to England, overthrow Queen Elizabeth, and bring the British Isles back under Catholic control. It was supposed to be unstoppable. It was supposed to change history. And it did change history, just not the way Spain planned. English warships attacked the Armada in the English Channel. They were faster, more nimble, and fought with brutal precision. The Spanish fleet, battered and broken, had no choice but to retreat. But the route home was not south through the Channel. That was blocked. The only way out was north, up around Scotland, and then down the wild Atlantic coast of Ireland. And that is where nature delivered the final blow. Massive storms, some of the worst in recorded memory, smashed the retreating fleet against the rocky Western Irish coastline. Ship after ship broke apart. Historians estimate that at least 24 vessels were lost along the shores of Donegal, Sligo, Mayo, Galway, Clare, and Kerry. Thousands of men drowned, but some survived. They crawled onto beaches, stumbled into villages, and found themselves stranded in a land that was itself under the heavy boot of English colonial rule. What happened next varied wildly from place to place. In some areas, English officials ordered the survivors executed on the spot. Local authorities, eager to prove their loyalty to the crown, carried out those orders without hesitation. But in other parts of the West, in the more remote regions where English control was weaker, Irish clans took the survivors in. They saw fellow Catholics. They saw men who shared a common enemy. They fed them, sheltered them, and in a handful of documented cases, these Spanish sailors married into local families and never left. That handful of cases, small in number but absolutely real in the historical record, became the seed. And from that tiny seed, an enormous legend grew. Within a couple of generations, the term Black Irish became the go-to explanation for any dark features in an Irish family. Dark hair, dark eyes, olive-toned skin. It did not matter where in Ireland your family actually came from. If someone looked different from the expected redhead stereotype, the Armada story was the answer. It was clean. It was dramatic. It came with a specific date and a famous disaster. And most importantly, it was easy to believe. When the Great Famine struck Ireland in the 1840s and millions of Irish men and women poured across the Atlantic to America, the Black Irish legend traveled with them. In the packed tenements of Boston and New York, in the coal towns of Pennsylvania, in the farming communities of the Midwest, the story took on new urgency. Irish immigrants were already fighting to establish their identity in a country that frequently treated them with contempt. The Armada story gave certain families a touch of exotic romance. It made their darker features feel storied rather than strange. It was identity armor, and they wore it proudly. But here is the thing about a good story. Just because it survives for 4 centuries does not mean it is true. When modern geneticists finally had the tools to test this legend, they went looking for exactly what you would expect to find if the Armada story were real. If hundreds or even thousands of Spanish sailors had genuinely blended into the Irish gene pool in a single dramatic event in 1588, there should be a clear genetic fingerprint. And that fingerprint should be concentrated in a very specific geography. The western counties, Galway, Clare, Kerry, Sligo, Mayo, Donegal, the exact coastline where the ships went down. The Irish DNA Atlas Project, run out of the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland, mapped genetic variation across the island with extraordinary precision. Other large-scale genome studies published throughout the 2010s added even more data. Researchers looked at county-level genetic patterns. They compared western coastal populations to inland populations. They searched for any sign of a sudden Spanish genetic injection dating to the late 16th century. They found nothing. Not a single statistically significant cluster, not one genetic signature that pointed to a dramatic influx of Iberian DNA concentrated in the Armada wreck zones. Whatever Iberian ancestry exists in Irish DNA, and it absolutely does exist, it is not shaped like a one-time catastrophic event from 1588. It is spread far too evenly across the entire island, it is embedded far too deeply in the genome, and it is far too old. So the Armada myth collapsed under the weight of actual evidence. But what rose in its place was something nobody expected, something far more ancient and far more extraordinary. Now let me tell you what the DNA actually revealed, and I promise you, this is wilder than any shipwreck story. Around 2,500 years before the Common Era, give or take a few centuries, something massive happened across Western Europe. A wave of human migration so large and so transformative that it essentially reshaped the genetic landscape of the entire Atlantic seaboard. Archaeologists call it the bell-beaker expansion, named after a distinctive style of bell-shaped pottery found at burial sites stretching from the Iberian Peninsula through France, across the English Channel into Britain, and over the Irish Sea into Ireland. For a long time, scholars debated whether the bell-beaker phenomenon was a movement of ideas or a movement of people. Maybe it was just a popular pottery style that spread through trade. Maybe it was a cultural fashion, not a migration. Then came ancient DNA technology, and the debate was settled almost overnight. In 2018, a landmark study published in the journal Nature changed everything. A massive international research team, including scientists from Trinity College Dublin, the University of Vienna, and Harvard's Ancient DNA Laboratory, extracted and sequenced genetic material from dozens of Bronze Age skeletons found across Britain and Ireland. What they discovered was staggering. Within just a few generations of the bell-beaker migration reaching the British Isles, roughly 90% of the pre-existing Neolithic genetic ancestry in Britain had been replaced. Ireland showed a similar pattern, slightly less extreme, but unmistakable. The people who had been living on these islands for thousands of years were largely replaced, genetically speaking, by the newcomers. And here is the detail that connects directly to the Black Irish mystery. These newcomers, the bell-beaker people, did not come from Northern Europe. The genetic and archaeological trail leads back to the Iberian Peninsula, modern-day Spain and Portugal. Bell-beaker culture appears earliest in the archaeological record there, before spreading north through France and eventually west into the British Isles. Let me say that again, because it deserves to sink in. A massive portion of the ancestral foundation of the Irish population traces back to a migration from the Iberian Peninsula roughly 4,000 years ago. Not 400, 4,000. Before there were Celts, before there were Vikings, before there were Normans, before there was anything remotely resembling a nation called Spain or a nation called Ireland. If you are finding this as mind-blowing as I think you are, drop a comment right now telling me where your family comes from in Ireland. I want to know. And if you have not subscribed yet, now is the moment. We are about to go even deeper, and you do not want to miss what comes next. Because there is a second independent line of genetic evidence that confirms this ancient Iberian connection. And it comes from a completely different part of the genome, the Y chromosome, passed from father to son, virtually unchanged, generation after generation. It is one of the most powerful tools geneticists have for tracing paternal ancestry deep into the past. Ireland has one of the highest concentrations on the entire planet of a Y chromosome lineage called haplogroup R1b, specifically a subclade known as R1b M269. Scientists sometimes call it the Atlantic modal haplotype, because it is concentrated so heavily along the Atlantic coast of Western Europe, Ireland, Western Britain, Brittany, and the Iberian Peninsula. In parts of Western Ireland, this single paternal lineage appears in over 90% of the male population. 90%. That is one of the highest concentrations of any single Y chromosome lineage found anywhere in the world. Where did it come from? Population geneticists have spent decades tracing its origins, and the leading models, built from ancient DNA extracted from Bronze Age burial sites across Western Europe, point in the same direction as the bell-beaker evidence, back toward the Iberian Peninsula. Some researchers go even further. They propose that this lineage survived the last ice age in a refugium population sheltering in Iberia. During the depths of the last glacial period, when massive ice sheets covered most of northern Europe, the Iberian Peninsula was one of a small number of regions where human populations could survive. When the ice finally retreated, those populations expanded outward, carrying their genetic signatures north and west. So we are looking at not one, but potentially two ancient connections between Ireland and Iberia. One from the end of the Ice Age and one from the Bronze Age bell-beaker migration. Two separate waves, thousands of years apart, both flowing from the same geographic origin, both leaving permanent marks in Irish DNA that are still detectable today. This is the real story behind the Black Irish. Not a shipwreck, not a single dramatic event, but a deep, ancient, foundational connection between the westernmost edges of Europe, written into the very bones of the Irish genome. Now let me walk you through what this means for your own DNA results, because this is where it gets personal. If you have taken a DNA test through any of the major platforms and your results show a percentage of Iberian, Spanish, Portuguese, or broader Southern European ancestry sitting alongside a dominant Irish or British Isles profile, your family probably explained it the same way families have been explaining it for generations. The Armada, but now you know better. That Iberian signal is almost certainly not coming from 1588. Think about the math for a moment. 16 or 17 generations separate you from the late 1500s. At that distance, a single fully Spanish ancestor would contribute a vanishingly tiny fraction of your total DNA. You would barely be able to detect it. If your test is showing several percentage points of Iberian ancestry, that is not one sailor. That is an entire population layer. Ancient, deep, and shared across millions of Irish descendants. If your testing platform groups you into a broader Irish or Irish diaspora genetic community and notes Iberian ancestry as part of that community's shared background, that is the algorithm confirming exactly what the ancient DNA researchers found, this is not unique to your family. It is part of the shared genetic inheritance of the Irish people as a whole. And here is something else worth understanding. The whole reason families needed the Black Irish explanation in the first place says more about cultural perception than about genetics. Ireland genuinely does have one of the highest rates of red hair on Earth. That trait is linked to specific variants of the MC1R gene, which reaches unusually high frequency across the island. That trait is linked to specific variants of the MC1R gene, which reaches unusually high frequency across the island. Because red hair and pale freckled skin became so strongly associated with Irish identity, especially in American popular culture from the 19th century onward, anyone who deviated from that image needed an explanation. But the truth is, dark hair and brown eyes have always been common in Ireland. They are not exotic. They are not unusual. They are not evidence of some foreign intrusion into an otherwise uniformly red-haired population. They have been part of the Irish genetic landscape. Since the Bronze Age, at least, the Black Irish label did not emerge because dark features were genetically rare. It emerged because red hair had become so culturally dominant in the public imagination of Irishness that anything different felt like it required a story. And humans love stories, especially dramatic ones. A shipwreck is more exciting than a slow Bronze Age migration. A doomed armada is more romantic than a population genetics study, and a named Spanish sailor ancestor is more compelling than a shared ancient heritage that belongs to everyone equally. That is why the myth survived so long. Not because it was supported by evidence, but because it filled a need. It answered a question that every family with a dark-haired outlier kept asking. Where did that come from? Now you have the real answer. And honestly, the real answer is far more remarkable. Your dark-haired great-grandmother did not get her features from a shipwrecked Spanish sailor in 1588. She carried them because, roughly 4,000 years ago, a wave of people from the Iberian Peninsula crossed into Ireland and became the genetic foundation of the island itself. Their DNA did not arrive as an accident of war. It arrived as the tide of human migration, slow and powerful and permanent. It mixed with whatever populations were already there. It became Irish before there was any such thing as Irish, and it has been passed down generation after generation through every layer of history that followed. The Celts came and layered their language and culture on top of it, but they did not erase it. The Vikings arrived in the 8th century, established settlements at Dublin and Waterford and Cork and Limerick, and left their own Scandinavian genetic mark, especially in those port cities. The Normans followed in the 12th century, adding yet another thread. And then the famine scattered all of it across the Atlantic to America, where a 400-year-old shipwreck story became the easy explanation for something that was actually 4,000 years in the making. Every layer added something, but that deep Iberian foundation was there first, and it never left. So the next time someone in your family pulls out an old photograph and points to the one relative, that was actually 4,000 years in the making. Every layer added something, but that deep Iberian foundation was there first, and it never left. So the next time someone in your family pulls out an old photograph and points to the one relative with the dark hair and the deep brown eyes and says that is the Spanish in us from the Armada, you can smile. Because you know something they do not. That connection to the Iberian Peninsula is real. It is written into the DNA, but it is not from a shipwreck in 1588. It is from one of the most significant population movements in the entire history of Western Europe. A migration so ancient that it happened before anyone on either end of the journey had a word for the land they lived on. The Black Irish myth was not completely wrong. It just had the wrong date by about 39 centuries. Before you go, I want to ask you something. Has your family ever used the term Black Irish? Has your DNA test ever shown Iberian or Southern European ancestry that nobody could explain? Drop your story in the comments. Tell me which county your family traces back to. Let us see if your family legend lines up with the Armada or with something far older and far more powerful. And if this video finally gave you the answer to a question your family has been asking for generations, share it with them. Send it to your parents, your cousins, your aunts and uncles. Let them hear the real story. Subscribe if you have not already, and hit that notification bell so you are here when we go deep on the next mystery hiding inside your DNA. The stories your family told you were not lies. They were just the best explanation anyone had before the science caught up. Now the science has caught up, and the truth is more extraordinary than the legend ever was. Think about the ancestors who walked those paths thousands of years ago. Think about the ancestors who walked those paths thousands of years ago. They were the first to call the Atlantic coast their home. Their resilience is what defined the very beginning of the Irish spirit, from the sunny shores of Iberia to the misty cliffs of Moher. It is a journey that spans millennia and connects millions of people today. You are a part of that legacy, a living link to the Bronze Age. The colors of your eyes and the shade of your hair are markers of time. They tell a story of survival, migration, and adaptation. So wear your history with pride, knowing the depth of your roots. They tell a story of survival, migration, and adaptation. So wear your history with pride, knowing the depth of your roots. Science has given us a window into the distant past, like never before. And what we see is a beautiful, complex tapestry of human movement. No single event can define a people, but a shared journey can. Thank you for watching and exploring this mystery with me today. Don't forget to look through those old albums one more time. Maybe you'll see those relatives in a whole new light now. Until next time, keep questioning the stories and seeking the truth. Your DNA is the ultimate history book, waiting to be read. Goodbye for now, and stay curious about where you came from. Maybe you'll see those relatives in a whole new light now. Until next time, keep questioning the stories and seeking the truth. Your DNA is the ultimate history book, waiting to be read. Goodbye for now, and stay curious about where you came from. The past is never truly gone as long as it lives within us. Every gene tells a tale of 1,000 years, and every discovery brings us closer to understanding ourselves. See you in the next video for more deep dives into history. We will continue to uncover the secrets of the ancient world. One strand of DNA at a time, we rebuild the forgotten chapters. Keep the conversation going in the comments below. Your insights and family stories make this community great. Let's keep learning together and honoring those who came before. One strand of DNA at a time, we rebuild the forgotten chapters. Keep the conversation going in the comments below. Your insights and family stories make this community great. Let's keep learning together and honoring those who came before. The journey of the Black Irish is just one of many we'll explore. There are so many more legends waiting to be tested by science. Stay tuned for the next adventure into your family's past. The truth is out there, hidden in the code of life, and we are the ones lucky enough to finally decode it. History is not just in books, it is in your blood. Take care and keep exploring the wonders of your heritage. Every discovery is a bridge to those who lived long ago. We owe it to them to get their story right at last. The 1588 Armada was just a moment, but you are forever. The end of this story is just the beginning of your understanding.